Imagine looking out over this uh, massive dust-choked staging ground. You're just standing there on a ridge, and spread out below you are 1,000 swift chariots.
Right.
And right beside them, another 1,000 heavy chariots. And then standing in this incredibly tight, disciplined formation behind all that armor is a staggering 100,000 mail-clad soldiers.
That's an unbelievable sight.
Yeah, I mean, the sun is catching the metal. The ground is literally shaking from the movement. It's this perfect cinematic visualization of just pure, uncompromising power. It's totally designed to inspire awe. But, beneath that whole visual spectacle is a really cold, unforgiving ledger.
Yeah, because the visual of that army, well, it's just the surface layer. What you're actually looking at is an economic engine running at absolute maximum capacity.
Exactly.
It's just shoveling money, physical resources, and human capital into an open furnace. The mathematics of keeping a machine of that scale operational dictate everything that happens next.
So, welcome to this deep dive into Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Specifically, we're looking at Part 02, Waging War. And our mission today is to look past the battlefield. We are not analyzing flanking maneuvers or terrain tactics.
Right, no tactical formations today.
No, we are unpacking the brutal, calculated economics and logistics of conflict. Our goal is to give you a really sharp, high-retention audio overview, especially for those of you tuning in on YouTube, because this is effectively a masterclass in ancient resource management.
It really is.
Where a miscalculation in the ledger is, well, it's far more fatal than a miscalculation with a sword.
Yeah, and the text lays this out immediately. The leader of armies is the ultimate arbiter of the people's fate.
Yeah.
That leader holds the absolute balance between a nation's peace and its total peril. It is a supreme mathematical responsibility, because if the logistics fail, the nation collapses from the inside out, completely regardless of how sharp the swords are.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp the strategy, we have to start with the actual literal daily receipt for this war.
The literal price tag.
Right. Sun Tzu states that deploying that 100,000-man army with enough provisions to travel 1,000 li costs a staggering 1,000 ounces of silver per day.
And we really need to ground that ancient measurement to understand the true friction involved here. 1,000 li is roughly 300 miles.
300 miles.
So we are talking about maintaining a supply chain for 100,000 people over 300 miles of ancient terrain. And that 1,000 ounces of silver every single day, it isn't just a payroll for the soldiers.
No, not at all.
The text is incredibly methodical about what this covers. It accounts for the expenditure at home in the capital, the expenditure out at the front, and this is huge, the massive diplomatic costs of entertaining guests, emissaries, and allies.
Yeah, the detail that really stands out the most to me is the mundane minutiae. He specifically itemizes small materials like glue and paint. I mean, when we picture ancient warfare, we tend to picture the clash of armor. We don't picture the sprawling administrative enterprise required to ensure archers' bows are properly glued in humid weather, or that, wooden chariots are painted and sealed against rot.
It requires this massive, continuous injection of capital.
Exactly. It reminds me of the really aggressive burn rate of a massive modern startup. Like, you raise an enormous pile of venture capital, but you have hundreds of engineers and a massive server infrastructure eating millions of dollars a month.
Yes.
And every single day, that runway gets shorter. If you don't ship the product and capture the market before the money runs out, the company dies.
And the mechanics of that startup analogy map perfectly onto Sun Tzu's warnings. When that runway starts running out in a military campaign, the decay is immediate and it compounds.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu notes that if victory is delayed, the men's weapons will physically grow dull. Their ardor, meaning their forward momentum and fighting spirit, will be damped.
He also singles out laying siege to a town as, like, the ultimate sinkhole for resources.
Oh, absolutely.
The text explicitly states that laying siege will exhaust an army's strength. It's the equivalent of a startup getting bogged down in years of regulatory litigation. You are just burning your daily capital to stand still.
And standing still invites the final collapse. Because when the weapons are dull, when the ardor is damped, the strength exhausted, and the treasure spent, the surrounding environment reacts to your weakness.
I smell blood.
Precisely. Opportunistic, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of the extremity.
The ultimate vulture capitalists. I mean, you've bled your own treasury dry trying to outlast one specific competitor, and suddenly the neutral neighbors realize your balance sheet is entirely empty.
And the warning in the text is absolute regarding this tipping point. Sun Tzu states that once those opportunistic chieftains spring up, no man, however wise, will be able to avert the disastrous consequences.
Wow.
The failure cascade becomes mathematically inevitable. You just cannot outthink a completely empty treasury.
So because that daily burn rate is so heavy, and because a shortened runway guarantees that outside competitors will pounce, time itself transforms from just a passive backdrop into the primary enemy.
Yes, the clock is far more dangerous than the opposing infantry.
Yeah. And Sun Tzu draws a really profound line in the sand regarding time. He writes that we have all heard of stupid haste in war, but cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays.
Let the weight of that statement settle for a second. Cleverness has never been associated with long delays.
Wait, I really want to push back on this assumption. Because in almost every other domain of strategy, investing, chess, diplomacy, patience, is considered the supreme virtue.
Usually, yes.
We're always taught to wait for the optimal setup, to calculate every angle. So why is a chaotic, stupid haste framed as strategically superior to a methodical, carefully plotted campaign?
What's fascinating here is that Sun Tzu is calculating the exponential multiplication of variables over time. In a controlled environment, like a chessboard, the variables are static. But in warfare, or, a highly volatile market, the variables compound every single day.
Right.
The degradation of supply lines, the weather, disease, political instability back in the capital, they all get worse. A flawed but rapidly executed plan terminates those compounding variables. A flawless, protracted plan basically guarantees you will eventually be crushed by them.
Because while you were waiting on that ridge for the perfect tactical weather, you just burned another 1,000 ounces of silver.
Exactly.
Your bows lost their glue, and 3 neighboring chieftains just noticed you're looking a little sluggish.
And the historical record supports this ruthlessly. Sun Tzu states flatly that there is no historical instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. None. You might win the final battle, but a long war means the economic foundation of your own state has been hollowed out. So you win the territory, but you lose your nation.
He frames this as a paradox of leadership, too. He says it is only the leader who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war who can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on.
Because if a leader does not respect the sheer, terrifying reality of that daily ledger, they will make decisions based purely on battlefield ego.
Right, they want the glory.
Exactly. They will think they have the luxury of time. But understanding the evil, the absolute economic devastation, is the only thing that forces a general to see that the ultimate objective must be the immediate victory, never the lengthy campaign.
So if a lengthy campaign guarantees the death of the state, the entire focus shifts to fueling a rapid, overwhelming execution. But how do you sustain 100,000 men moving at top speed without ripping the economic heart out of your own country to do it?
That requires an uncomfortable look at domestic supply chains. Sun Tzu introduces the rule of the skillful soldier. Never raise a second levy, and never load your supply wagons more than twice.
Okay.
You must draft your forces and load your carts once. You do not return to your own citizens for more.
Because constantly returning to your own citizens destroys the very infrastructure you're supposed to be defending. The text actually breaks this domestic drain down into 2 separate mechanical failures, the drain of distance and the drain of proximity.
Right.
Let's start with distance. Maintaining an army from afar requires contributions from a distance, which impoverishes the people.
Just think about the physics of ancient logistics. To move a cart of grain 300 miles across a country, well, the beasts of burden pulling that cart have to eat.
Yeah.
The drivers have to eat. The armed escorts protecting the cart from bandits, they have to eat.
It's like trying to pipe water through a 300-mile-long hose that is covered in punctures.
That's a great way to put it.
The water is the revenue and provisions generated by the citizens back home. But by the time that water pressure actually reaches the frontline troops, almost all of it has leaked out into the dirt just to push the remaining trickle forward.
Exactly. The friction of transport consumes the payload. But if a general tries to solve this by keeping the army close to home, they trigger the second failure, the drain of proximity.
A local issue.
Yeah. When the army is close by, prices artificially skyrocket, and those high prices drain the people's substance.
We really have to look at the mechanics of why this happens.
Yeah.
You drop 100,000 soldiers into a domestic farming region. The soldiers have silver, they need calories.
Lots of calories.
Right. And the local farmers have a fixed harvest. So the quartermasters start aggressively confiscating grain stores to guarantee military rations, which creates an immediate artificial famine.
Instantly.
The remaining grain on the local market suddenly costs 10 times as much. The civilians are instantly priced out of their own harvest.
It is hyperinflation, just totally driven by military monopoly. So whether the army is 300 miles away bleeding the transport lines or 10 miles away warping the local market, the civilian population pays the price. The text is mathematically precise about the fallout, too. Afflicted by these heavy exactions, the people's homes are stripped bare. 3/10 of their income is completely dissipated.
30% of civilian wealth simply vanishes into the friction of moving and feeding the army. And the government ledgers hit even harder.
Oh, much harder.
Sun Tzu calculates that 40% of the total state revenue is completely consumed by replacement costs. And the list of these replacements is so telling. It's not a list of glorious weapons lost in epic duels.
No, it's very mundane.
It is 40% of state revenue gone to broken chariots.
Worn-out horses.
Right, and breastplates and helmets,
Bows, arrows.
spears and shields,
Protective mantles.
and draft oxen.
And heavy wagons. Just look at the composition of that list. Worn-out horses, draft oxen, heavy wagons, broken chariots. These are logistical casualties.
Yeah.
This is the cost of just trying to drag the infrastructure of violence across the physical earth. It eats the state alive from the inside out.
So if pulling resources from 300 miles away starves the capital, and buying them locally starves the peasantry, the math leaves you with zero domestic options. The state is effectively cornered by its own logistical needs.
Which leaves only one remaining source of fuel to keep the machine running.
The enemy.
The enemy. The wise general must recognize that their own domestic supply line is a suicide pact, and they must flip the polarity. They must turn the opposing nation into their own supply depot.
This is the fundamental directive of the entire text. Bring war material from home, but forage on the enemy. You bring your own armor and your own weapons because you can't guarantee you'll find those in the field, but you eat their food.
And the reason you eat their food is rooted in a brutal asymmetrical equation. Sun Tzu states that 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of one's own.
20.
Yes. And similarly, a single pickle of the enemy's provender is worth 20 from the home store.
Let's ground that measurement. A pickle is roughly 130 pounds. The math here is mind-bending. If your frontline troops confiscate 130 pounds of the enemy's grain, it is mathematically equal to 20 times that amount.
Yeah.
2,600 pounds pulled from your own capital.
Because to deliver 130 pounds to the front line over a 300-mile supply route, your oxen, your drivers, and your guards would have consumed the other 2,470 pounds along the journey.
It's just wild.
By foraging locally, you instantly eliminate the transport friction. Furthermore, every pound you consume is a pound denied to the opposing force. It is a massive swing on the ledger.
You are no longer bleeding your own startup dry. You are forcibly acquiring the competitor's assets to fund your own aggressive expansion.
Exactly.
But to actually execute this, you need your 100,000 soldiers to aggressively take those assets. And this forces us into the psychology of combat. Sun Tzu outlines a very clear behavioral manipulation. He says to kill the enemy, men must be roused to anger. But to see the advantage of defeating the enemy, they must be given rewards.
Because you need to manufacture blind aggression to survive the physical clash of infantry, but blind aggression destroys assets. You don't want your men smashing the enemy's grain carts or bringing their chariots in a fit of rage.
Right.
You need them to capture those assets intact, so you pivot from rage to calculated financial incentive.
And he provides a highly specific tactical procedure for this. When 10 or more chariots are captured in a clash, you must reward the soldiers who took the first ones.
You incentivize the hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You make the intact capture of competitor infrastructure the single most profitable action a frontline soldier can take.
And once you have acquired those chariots, you immediately substitute your own flags for the enemy's flags. You mingle the captured chariots and use them in conjunction with your own. You literally bolt the rival's hardware onto your own server racks.
And it doesn't stop at hardware. The text states that the captured soldiers themselves must be treated kindly and kept.
Kept and integrated?
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because there is a massive psychological contradiction here that I'm struggling to resolve. I mean, 10 seconds ago, the general had to manipulate his men into a state of lethal, blinding anger just to survive the frontline clash.
Right.
But the moment the opposing soldier drops their spear, The general expects his men to instantly switch from bloodlust to gentle hospitality. How do you command an army to treat the people they were just trying to slaughter kindly?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a profound detachment from emotion in Sun Tzu's philosophy. The anger isn't personal, it's just a chemical tool required to break the enemy's formation.
Wow, okay.
But the kindness is equally devoid of actual sentiment. The kindness is a logistical tool for integration, because if you mistreat or abuse captives, you create resistance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have to spend your own silver feeding guards to watch them, or deploying soldiers to put down their rebellions.
So you're spending your own runway managing the people you just defeated.
Exactly. But if you treat them kindly, the resistance evaporates. They stop being a liability on your balance sheet and transition into an asset. You absorb the rival engineering team.
Yeah.
The ultimate victory isn't the total annihilation of the enemy. Annihilation is a waste of resources. The goal is to absorb their momentum. You eat their grain, you repaint their chariots, you feed their men, and you turn their men into your men.
The text calls this the ultimate hack, using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength. You don't just step over their bodies, you consume their entire logistical apparatus so that you walk away from the battle heavier and better funded than when you arrived.
It's brilliant.
It is a flawlessly calculated mechanism to counteract that 1,000 ounce of silver daily burn rate. You basically force the enemy to underwrite your campaign.
You really do.
So what does this all mean for us, sitting here thousands of years later? If we look back at the journey of this text, we started with a staggering economic reality, a daily receipt so heavy it accounted for glue, paint, and the inevitable decay of infrastructure.
Yeah.
We saw that because of this relentless burn rate, speed is the only metric of survival. Cleverness is simply never found in a long, drawn-out delay. We learned how domestic supply lines act as a leaky hose, mathematically guaranteeing the bankruptcy of both the peasantry and the government.
The 40%.
Exactly. And finally, we uncovered the masterstroke, feeding off the opponent's resources at a 1 to 20 valuation, bypassing the friction of distance and absorbing their strength to augment our own.
It really strips away all the mythology of conflict and leaves us with pure mechanical resource management.
It really does.
It proves that survival isn't about raw power. It is about who can manipulate the friction of the environment to their advantage. Which brings us to a critical modern application of this ancient math. This raises an important question for you, the listener, right now.
I love taking this out of the ancient context. Let's frame it.
Think about the daily friction in your own life. The projects you manage, the personal battles you fight, the goals you are trying to reach. If Sun Tzu proves that simply transporting one cartload of your own supplies creates 20 times more exhaustion than capturing what is already in front of you, well, how much of your daily energy is wasted on transport?
Wow.
How often are you carrying water in a leaky hose, burning your own mental and physical capital just trying to get into position, rather than applying your effort directly at the source of the problem? The challenge here is to look at your environment differently.
Yeah.
How can you forage within your own challenges? How do you take the obstacles, the pushback, and the friction in front of you and actively turn those elements into the fuel that drives your own momentum?
That is exactly what separates a prolonged struggle from a decisive victory. Stop burning your own silver, stop dragging heavy wagons from 300 miles away, and start turning the friction of your environment into your own fuel.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the mechanics behind the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next one.